Welcome back to the Malt Miller YouTube channel, homebrewers. In this video, we're taking the topic of pressure fermentation one step further, and today we're looking at the Apollo Titan from Keg King. Pressure fermentation and pressure vessels is a topic we've covered in depth over the last year here on our YouTube channel, and it's actually an area of the hobby we've immersed ourselves into because of the benefits that it can lead when you're thinking about certain beer styles that you're going to be brewing. For example, if you want to turn lagers around in a really quick fashion, fermenting under pressure means that you can raise the temperature, thus speeding up the fermentation time of the yeast with limiting all of those off flavors and esters that can be produced when you ferment lager yeasts at higher temperatures. The other big benefit is being able to brew in a low oxygen environment. Now this pays dividends when we're talking about those big juicy hoppy New England IPAs and pale ales, and also all of those West Coast IPAs and pale ales. Also, the big benefit of fermenting under pressure is that you can use things like spunding valves to naturally carbonate your beer as well, thus reducing your dependence on CO2 to force carbonate beer after fermentation. Now, last year, Martin and I covered in depth the range of Apollo fermenters from Keg King. You can check out that video up here. Make sure you stick around to the end where Martin ends up getting me incredibly wet by doing something that I told him he shouldn't do. But the big benefit of those fermenters for us was the actual ease of use and how accessible they are to get into that whole world of pressurized fermentation. Now though, we've started stocking the big brother of those fermenters, which is the Titan by Keg King as well. And this is basically exactly the same design as the plastic fermenters, but constructed from stainless steel, which brings a huge amount of benefits to the homebrewer. Now you might be thinking, what are the benefits of stainless steel over one of the PET vessels? And there's a few real standout ones for us. First and foremost, it's made from stainless steel. Now that means that in terms of cleaning this, you're going to be able to use cleaners that can be operated at higher temperatures without the risk of melting the plastic. The other big benefit for this fermenter that Keg King have included is because of its stainless steel construction, they've deployed some awesome additional features and adaptations to it. Firstly, they've added 1.5-inch tri-clamp ports in 3 locations, one on the very front, one on the cone, and then one at the very bottom as well. And that means we've got a whole world of customization available to us, which can turn this fermenter from being a stainless steel snub-nosed fermenter into being a fully fledged Uni-Tank. The other thing that they've done with this is added extendable legs, which gives you different height options. So if you're putting this into, say, a fermentation chamber that you've got at home, or indeed a serving chamber, you've got the ability to drop the leg height down or raise it up, dependent on what you're planning on doing with the fermenter. It's really useful to be able to raise it up because, again, that gives us access to this very bottom tri-clamp at the bottom of the cone, which is where we can start really thinking about some of the customizations that we want to use on this tank. Now, the other feature they've included are stainless steel handles on the side, and they're really durable. It means that you can pick this up and move it around even when it's full. Now, obviously, you need to be careful whenever you're moving around a full fermenter, but it does mean that you've got that peace of mind of being able to move it from maybe your brewing space into a fermentation chamber or another location in your home brewery. And then at the very top of the tank, they've included the same design plastic head unit that they use on the Apollos already. And we'll go into that in a bit more detail as we take a closer look. But we're familiar with it, it works, it has keg posts on it for both putting gas in or letting gas out, and also for serving or for transfer from the tank into a keg. Now, stainless steel over plastic means that it's far more durable. So when we talk about cleaning, you know, if you're cleaning a plastic fermenter, whether it's a bucket or a PET pressurized tank, like any of the ones we stock here, you have a risk of scratching it. And if you scratch plastic, that creates an environment where bacteria and other nasties can linger that could spoil your next batch of beer. Because it's stainless steel on the inside and it's a mirror finish as well, it means that you're actually in a position where that is far less likely to happen. Now, if we just take a quick look at the very top of the unit, as I've already said, you've got the 2 posts, both gas and liquid, so that you can either transfer or dispense from the tank or you can fit, say, a spunding valve on the gas side, such as a spundy, so that you can ferment under pressure and actually carbonate the beer, or if you needed to, you can add extra pressure in. You've also got this central port, which is where the thermal well is, and I'll show you that in a moment. And then you've got a PRV on the back. Now the PRV can unscrew so that you can fit different rated PRVs onto it if you wish to, and also you can completely unscrew that assembly so that you can turn this into what Keg King call the dry hopping port. Now if we just take the collar off and lift out the whole lid assembly, we can see first and foremost we've got this really long stainless steel thermal well. Now that means that if you're using temperature control for fermentation and you've got it hooked up to some form of temperature controller, you can insert the temperature probe right into the bottom of this. That means you're going to get a reading of the temperature right in the center of your fermenting wort, which is great for accuracy. You've also got the silicone tubing, which fits onto the product out post. Now that means you end up with a floating dip tube. Now here you've got the big silver float. That means that this whole assembly is going to sit at the very top of the wort whilst it's fermenting. Now, why is that beneficial? Well, when you come to transfer the wort out into a keg after fermentation, or indeed to serve, you've got this mesh stainless steel cage which is going to filter out any hot particles or any yeast clumps that might be there, but you're also drawing from the very top of the tank, so that means you're drawing the clearest beer possible at all times. Now let's just touch on a couple of other things. So it's made out of 304 stainless steel, which we know is really high grade, but it's also a millimetre thick, which is reasonably thick for a fermenter of this price range. It does mean that it's not going to be able to like pick up dings and dents really easily or scratches. Also, it's rated to 30 psi. Now 30 psi, it means that you've got loads of capability to be able to do those pressurized fermentations of lagers, or indeed to carbonate the beer throughout the fermentation using the CO2 that's naturally produced during that process. It also means that if you want to, you could be serving your beer directly from this tank after fermentation. Now because it's made from stainless steel, that means that it is going to last you a lifetime. Unlike some of the PET fermenters that do come with a date range on them where you should be thinking about replacing the actual plastic body, this is entirely made from stainless steel, so that's not a consideration for you. Now let's take a look at some of the ways that we could customize the Titan now that we've looked through the features of it. Now, as I've said, the big thing on this tank is that you've got three 1.5 inch tri-clamp ports, one at the very top, one in the middle of the cone, one at the very bottom. Now, the one that really stands out for us in terms of like shouting that it needs something done to it is the one at the very bottom. Now, many of the plastic fermenters that are available in this range have a collection vessel at the bottom so that you can remove trub, you can remove yeast, you can dump hops, all of that kind of stuff. Now, out of the box, this doesn't come with that, so it works in the same way as a snub-nosed fermenter, but it gives you the option to do it. So the first thing that actually we think is a really good adaptation for this is to add some kind of facility to be able to dump out yeast, trub and hops from this tank. So take a look at this. Right, so we have added to the bottom tri-clamp port here a 1.5 inch tri-clamp elbow made out of stainless steel and also a butterfly valve. Now straight off the bat, this means that we can dump yeast really easily, and we can dump trub and we can dump hops out of the bottom of the cone throughout our fermentation. Now, I've used this fermenter in this configuration and I was absolutely blown away with how easy it was to get the hops out during the fermentation process. There's a huge benefit to being able to do that because you don't want your hops in contact with the beer for too long, and equally getting the yeast out before you dry hop is really advantageous as well because of some of the off flavors that can be kicked off if you leave your finished beer on dead or dying yeast for too long. So our number one adaptation for this tank is, first and foremost, adding a configuration like this. Now, if you wanted to, you could also put a sight glass on there as well so that you could see as you were dumping that you're getting into clear beer. But this, in its configuration as it is right now, worked an absolute treat for me. Now if we look at the other two ports, now you could also start to configure some other adaptations here. For example, on the port that's on the side of the cone, if you wanted to, you could add like a racking arm. Now you don't necessarily need to do that because you're going to be drawing your beer out through the very top anyway when it comes to transfer, but if you wanted to, you could do that. Actually, the one thing that really excites us is being able to add some form of carbonation stone, or indeed some kind of aeration stone, so that you can inject oxygen into the tank during fermentation. And then at the very top here, for those of us that like to take lots of different readings, you could add something like a secondary thermal well so that you're getting 2 temperature readings throughout the fermentation process. But as it stands right now, using this as a starter, that is an absolute must for us, because it converts this from being a snub-nosed fermenter into something more akin to a fully fledged Uni-Tank. Now I want to talk next about one of the other adaptations that I'm really keen to add to this, because I have fermented a beer in here, and as I said, I was really impressed. I fermented it under pressure, and I didn't really need to worry about temperature control during that process. However, I think being able to really turn this into a Uni-Tank involves some form of external temperature control, such as a glycol chiller, and luckily we've just started stocking something that's going to enable us to do that. Now the item that I'm alluding to is the Chilling Coil that's now just come into us here at the Malt Miller from Keg King, and this is suitable for all of the 35 litre fermenters in the range. So it's going to work perfectly with our Titan, but also on the Apollo, both the 35 litre Uni-Tank and also the 35 litre snub nose. Now it's made from stainless steel, which again means we're going to be able to use it in this tank with peace of mind, knowing that we can clean and sanitize it really easily. Now you might be wondering how we fit this. Now I'm going to show you exactly how we do it, but before I do, just touch on some of the way that it works. Now up at the top here, we've got some compression fittings. That means that we can drill holes into the lid, and the holes are marked out in here so that you can then insert this from the bottom, put the threaded nut over the top, tighten it up, thus creating a pressure tight seal so that we don't lose the pressure rating of the fermenter as well. Now it's made out of 8mm tubing, which means that up at the top here we've got these inlet and outlet ports which we can hook up to our tubing for our glycol chiller or whatever chilling solution that you want to use. Now this is an accessory that I've not used with the Titan, so what we're going to do next is we're going to drill the lid, we're going to fit this in, we're going to fill this with some water, hook it up to one of our glycol chillers here, and see just how quickly we can cool some liquid down. Now it's important that we plan the next step in this process really carefully, because we do not want to damage this lid or cause any situation where we aren't able to maintain pressure in our tank. Handily, on the inside of the lid, Keg King have marked out where the ports need to be drilled. They've also included a little divot in the center of each of those holes, so that actually when you start the process, you've got a really central starting point so that you're not going to skit around with any of your tools. And the tools that we're going to need to do this are a power drill. I've got a 6mm drill bit, and we're going to drill a pilot hole with this. And then I've got a stepped bit as well. Now I mentioned that the tubing on the chiller coil itself is 8mm. However, the threads which we need to get through the lid as well are slightly wider. They're 10mm. So that means we need to drill a hole that's 10mm for both of these to go through. And then the last thing we need is a deburrer as well. And that just means that once we've finished drilling the plastic, we can just tidy up the edges, make sure that there's no like little bits of plastic still stuck to there or rough edges. Now on the lid, they mark out 3 different locations for you to drill the holes. Now you need to drill 2 holes, one for each side of the chiller coil, and I'm going to choose to place mine either side of the PRV. That means they're fully out of the way of where the assembly for the keg posts are going to be, so that they're not going to interfere with, you know, drawing any of the liquid out or adding gas in. Now I've completely disassembled the lid for this, and the reason that I've done that is because I do not want to be in a position where it's kind of on the wonk and I'm trying to drill sideways. I want to have it on a nice flat surface so that I can get the drill directly above it in a really clean way and not risk damaging the lid. So the first thing we need to do is add our drill bit that we're going to be using to drill our pilot hole. I know that I've got these 2 here, and I can see that in the middle there we've got our little divot. So I'm going to place the drill bit in there nice and slowly, start drilling through until I go all the way through. Now I'm going to move on to widening the hole with the stepped drill bit, and I need to go to the 10mm line on the drill bit. So again, I'm going to go nice and slowly. just back off and check where I'm at. Okay, now I can see that I've made the 10mm hole on one side. What I need to do now is just flip it over and go back through the other way, because the plastic's quite thick on this, so I want to make sure that I've got the same hole lined up all the way through. There we go. So that's the hole opened right up. I've actually had to go to the slightly larger 12mm just so that I can make sure I get the thread all the way through. We need to use our deburrer here just to go round, make sure we take off any jagged edges that might be on the plastic at all. That could prevent us from being able to get a decent seal. I can offer this up now and just make sure that the thread fits all the way through, which it does, and then I'll be able to move on to doing the next one. So that's the chiller coil inserted now into the lid assembly on the Titan, and it's worth noting it can be a little bit fiddly to make sure that you get the seals set up correctly so that you maintain pressure. In fact, what we needed to do on ours was actually swap the rubber O-rings out for some that were slightly thicker, just so we could make sure we got the compression we needed to make sure the seal was secure. After that, what we did is we've put some pressure into the tank, we sprayed the lid with some soapy water just to look for any leaks that were occurring, and there was none showing. And then actually what we've done since then is we've added about 10 psi into the tank. We've added one of the Kegland blow ties on there as well, so that we could have a look at the pressure in there, leave it for a period of time for a few hours, and then actually just make sure that the pressure maintains. And I'm pleased to say that it has done, and we are now on to the next stage of our cooling solution for the Apollo Titan. So in order for us to hook this up to our glycol lines, we actually need to do a little bit further adaptation. Now, it depends on the size of the tubing that you've got on your glycol chiller. Today we're going to be using the Grainfather GC4 to do our chilling test on this. So as I've said, the tubing at the top here, which is where the cooling coils coming out through the lid assembly, is 8mm. So to get that to the right size that we need for our glycol tubing, we've actually got a few John Guest fittings. So we have some 3/8 to 5/16 line reducers, and actually the 5/16 line reducers fit directly onto the chilling coil like that, and those will create the seal that we need. Then to couple these up to our chilling lines, we've then got some barbs as well that just push fit into the 3/8 side, and that means now we can easily push the glycol lines from the Grainfather Glycol Chiller onto both of the lines for the chilling coil. So we're going to get this filled up with some water, we're going to get it hooked up to the Grainfather GCA controller for the Glycol Chiller, and we're going to do a chilling test. Right, so that's our Titan all hooked up to our GC4 Glycol Chiller by Grainfather. Now we're using the GCA kit. Now the GCA kit comes in two variants. It comes with a option where you have a chilling coil, so if you're using one of the larger Grainfather fermenters, you can hook it up with that, but actually the one we're using doesn't come with a chiller coil, and the reason for that is we're using the chilling coil that's suitable for the Titan and the Apollos. It comes with Grainfather's wireless temperature controller that hooks up to the Grainfather app, so you get all of your temperature control via the app that Grainfather make. It also comes with a temperature probe, which we've inserted all the way down into the thermal well on the lid, and it also comes with a heating pad. Now we haven't hooked the heating pad up because really all we're interested in doing right now is being able to see how quickly this can cool down the full volume of water that we've got inside of the Titan. Now we've filled it up with around about 25-30 litres of water. I hooked it up, as you can see in the footage here, and it was reading about 21 degrees nearly, the temperature of the water that was coming through the tap. But already in just a few minutes we've got down to 18 degrees. So what I'm going to be doing now is I'm going to set myself an hour's timer and see just how cold we can get this in an entire hour. Hey Siri, set me a 1 hour timer. Now it's been about an hour and we are down to 11.6 degrees, so I'm really pleased with the progress here, but I'm going to push it even further. I'm going to leave it for another hour and see just how cold we can get this. Now the GCA kit is set to 5 degrees C, so we'll see just how close to that we can get in a total of 2 hours. Now, it's been another hour and we're down to close to 9 degrees, so I'm really pleased that we've managed to knock off a couple more degrees in terms of the temperature. It's worth noting that it is the middle of summer here right now in the UK, and it is over 20 degrees in terms of our ambient temperature. Also, it's worth noting that our glycol chiller is currently hooked up to 3 other fermenters, which are also all cold crashing. I'm really pleased with the performance of the cooling coil we fitted to our Apollo Titan. Now, as I said, it will fit in all of the other 35 litre Apollo fermenters, including the plastic ones. So I'm really pleased with how this is working for us, and I'm comfortable that we would be able to cold crash beers over a prolonged period of time using this setup. Now, I hope this has shown you the versatility that you can get when you adapt the Apollo Titan from Keg King and add some of the customizations we've talked about in this video. But also, I hope it's shown you just how easy it is to fit the cooling coil, maintain your pressure, and also use the cooling coil to chill down your beer using one of these fermenters. Now, if you've got any questions at all about this setup or any of the other PET fermenters that we stock here at the Malt Miller, please drop them down in the comments below. And also, if you've got ways that you choose to try and cool these fermenters, we'd love to hear about them down in the comments as well. So please let us know your thoughts. All that remains for me to say is, if you're not already, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications so you can stay up to date with everything we're doing here at Malt Miller HQ. And you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and of course TikTok. Have a great brew.